Hey everyone, it's me again, and welcome back to yet another installment of the Mainline Mario Marathon. In the last video, I took a detailed look at Super Mario Galaxy in what was the longest episode of the marathon so far. Galaxy was the, no pun intended, star attraction of the Wii, and it quickly became one of the best-selling and most beloved entries in the entire series, a reputation it continues to hold to this very day. Its space theming, gravity mechanics, and creative level design, among many other things, were universally praised, and the game became an instant classic in the series' repertoire, right up there with the original 2D games. While I was more critical of some of the game's aspects than some may be, particularly regarding the 100% completion experience, which I found to be frustrating more than anything, I share the community's enthusiasm for the game itself and consider it one of the finest Mario titles out there. I thought the story was one of the best in the series, the graphics were beautiful and made great use of the Wii's hardware, the soundtrack was full of hits, and while the control and more linear level design aren't to my exact taste when it comes to 3D Mario games, I nonetheless find them to be very solid and thought the gravity mechanics added an impressive new dimension to the levels. It may not be my ideal Mario game, but not everything has to be perfectly tuned to my hyper-specific tastes for me to enjoy it. Galaxy is just one of those cases. Naturally, for how popular and beloved Galaxy was, it helped to sell the Wii quite a bit. It already started off strong with all the casuals who bought Wii Sports, but Galaxy is one of those games that fully convinced hardcore fans. With all of these circumstances, a sequel to the game seemed like a no-brainer. Not only would it be a chance for further financial success, it would be an opportunity to clean up aspects of the first Mario Galaxy that didn't work and add even more creative new things. Well, that wouldn't happen for several more years. In the meantime, the Wii would receive a sequel to New Super Mario Bros., which that's a story for another video, several spin-offs including Paper Mario and Mario Kart, and virtual console releases for many of the previous titles. However, that sequel would eventually come, and would be the first ever direct follow-up to a 3D Mario game. Of course, I'm talking about the subject of this review, Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Wow, is that another rhyme? Oh my god!
Funnily enough, Super Mario Galaxy 2 was actually started development as an enhanced version of the original game. It was internally referred to as Super Mario Galaxy More, or Super Mario Galaxy 1.5, and was projected to take a year to develop. Originally, it would merely incorporate elements cut from the first game, such as Yoshi and a spaceship shaped like Mario's head, but the team eventually added so many things that they decided it would be better off as a fully fleshed out sequel. It was eventually revealed at E3 2009 and slated for release in 2010. In interviews, Reggie Fils-Aimé said that Galaxy 2 would be more difficult than the first, and Miyamoto stated that it would have less of a story, indicating that the game's focus was squarely on gameplay and expanding upon Galaxy in that sense. When it released in 2010, the game was met with universal praise, with many calling it better than the first game, and one of, if not the best Mario title besides Mario 3 and World, if a bit samey when put next to Galaxy 1. And some outlets criticize its difficulty. Typical game journalists. As for me, Super Mario Galaxy 2 was one of the first Mario games I recall playing. I'm pretty sure I had already experienced the new Super Mario Bros. Games on DS and Wii, alongside many of the classics in both versions of SM64, but at this point, I'm not sure of the exact order I played these games in. In fact, I don't even remember when I first got my Wii, and for all I know, it could have materialized in my old house's entertainment center one day, and I've just had it ever since. I actually played Galaxy 2 before the first game, but I would soon get the first one in the earliest auction I remember winning, so I don't have significantly more nostalgia for either one. I just remember getting lost in these games with my brother, playing them with him, watching videos and reading about weird theories. Ah, good times. Come 2018, I would revisit the game years after I had last played it, alongside the first one. Back then, I enjoyed it more than Galaxy 1 as I always had, but similarly had some issues with it. Today, I'll be offering my thoughts after replaying it again early last year, and once again for this review. How do I think Super Mario Galaxy 2 holds up a little over a decade later? Do I now agree with practically everyone else that this is the best 3D Mario game? How do I think it compares to the original as well as even older entries? Well, sit back, get something to munch on, and prepare yourself. This is my review of Super Mario Galaxy 2. As usual, I'll start with the plot. Remember how I said that during its development, the story was one of the lesser priorities for Super Mario Galaxy 2? Well, when I said that, I really meant it, because Galaxy 2 is far more story-light than the previous game, and even Sunshine for that matter. In fact, the plot itself was more or less recycled from the first game too, except with a few details changed and heavily watered down. Not that Galaxy 1 was some masterpiece of cinematic storytelling or whatever, but it was trying something a little more involved than the average game in this series. You'll never see me demand that every last piece of media in existence has to have some super complex plot with tons of deep resonating themes or whatever, and that's especially the case with something like Mario, a series that never never had a narrative focus. My issue with Galaxy 2's plot, then, is that it's rather unoriginal and feels pretty rushed in execution, even for a Mario game. Super Mario Galaxy 2 opens with who is presumably Rosalina recounting the story of the game, just like Galaxy 1. The Star Festival has once again arrived in the Mushroom Kingdom, which is odd considering it only happens once every century, but I'll explain that in a minute. Peach sends Mario yet another letter, except now she explicitly mentions baking a cake, just like Super Mario 64. That's the third game that's began this way. Yeah, anyways, Mario then makes his way to the castle for the festival, this time in a side-scrolling section. He runs into plenty of excited citizens along the way, and soon comes across the baby Luma, who helped him out in the last game, lying in the grass. He once again teams up with Mario and gives him the ability to spin back. I have to admit, the way he just sort of finds the Luma there comes off as a lot more lazy than the first Galaxy, where the partnership felt more earned, but whatever. Mario then makes his way to the castle, and as soon as he enters the main square, Bowser's just there, attacking the castle. He's got Zilla size now. Yeah, just like the Luma, Bowser seemingly just comes out of nowhere. Compared to the previous games, this is somewhat jarring. I guess you could argue that Bowser also came out of the blue in Galaxy 1, and maybe he did, but here you literally turn a corner and there he is all of a sudden. While it is cool to see him at such a size, the intro of the last game with its gigantic UFO and laser beams and all that shit was way cooler. I do appreciate the fact that this game's cutscenes are all in-engine and therefore suffer from less compression artifacts, but those FMVs offered a much more interesting visual presentation last time around. Bowser then taunts Mario, revealing that he's once again taken Peach. He says that he wants to take over the universe again, and then makes a sexist remark, says he'll have cake with Peach instead. He then takes off for deep space again, leaving the castle in place this time. Mario meets some Lumas at the castle bridge, one of which turns into a launch star so Mario can give chase. In this game, the Lumas can actually talk after transforming into launch stars, which, sure, yeah, whatever you say. Mario was launched straight into the first galaxy of the game, similarly to Galaxy 1, but not the exact same because that opening stage was just for one star. Here, Mario makes his way to a boss that's very similar to the one from Good Egg Galaxy, defeats it, and then gets the first power star. Afterwards, he ends up on the small planetoid, along with a group of Lumas and their leader, a big purple Luma named Lubba. The planet Ron turns out to be a makeshift starship the Lumas threw together. Lubba says that the ship is powered by stars, and strikes a deal with Mario after discovering that he's teamed up with Master Luma, which is actually the name of the Luma we've traveled with. He'll help him track down Peach and Bowser as long as Mario collects stars to power the ship, to which Mario agrees. The Lumas then make the ship look like Mario and rename it to Starship Mario, after which Lubba declares Mario the captain of the ship. Sounds a bit familiar again, doesn't it? Just like Galaxy 1, the central motivation for the player to collect stars is to power the ship that makes up the hub world. Even though some details are different, like how Bowser doesn't steal the castle itself and the addition of Lubba and the Starship Mario, the basic gist is the same. The Star Festival occurs in the Mushroom Kingdom, Peach invites Mario to watch the falling stars, Bowser interrupts the celebration and takes Peach away, and then Mario teams up with Master Luma and uses a specialized spaceship to collect power stars, which are needed to fuel the respective ship and stop Bowser's plan to take over the universe. This time though, the plot is of course far more barren, and doesn't have the incredible presentation than Galaxy 1 had. While it isn't nearly as bad as some past and many future cases, Galaxy 2 nonetheless feels like one of the benefactors of the reputation Mario would amass for unoriginality in some ways. Again, my problem isn't that this game doesn't try to have a mind-blowing story, it's that it essentially recycles the plot from the last game and just dumbs it down with less spectacle and stakes. However, the thing that somewhat justifies it is the conclusion of Galaxy 1. If you remember, the universe underwent a complete reset at the end of that game. Rosalina did say that the cycle repeats itself, but not in the same exact way, so it could be argued that this is what Galaxy 2's plot focuses on. Maybe the universe was reset to right before the Star Festival happened, and this game follows the cycle repeating. Same general events and circumstances, but slightly different details. Personally, I think this is the best way to explain it, and it fills in the potential plot hole of the Star Festival happening again in spite of the century-long gap between each arrival of the comet, as previously established. I'm willing to subscribe to that theory, but that doesn't save this story from feeling truncated or cut down. Some may ask why I'm seemingly taking this so seriously when Mario games and platformers by extension shouldn't try to have stories. While I would agree that a huge in-depth story isn't a necessity for something to be remotely considered good, like some people do, as I've said, I nonetheless find it's a huge bonus if a video game in particular can pull a more in-depth story off. Context is what drives the player, and if plots and games aim to accomplish that basic task and nothing more, then no harm, no foul. That said, if a game goes above and beyond and successfully integrates an interesting story on top of that, it can turn a great game into an experience you'll never forget. That's exactly why I veto the notion that Sonic games, for example, should apparently avoid more involved plots altogether. Honestly, it really all comes down to the execution for me, and I find that Galaxy 2's story feels lazy even by Mario standards. I know, gameplay is what really matters, I'm just trying to be thorough with my thoughts here. So yeah, I may have some complaints with the story and how it's presented, but I can't say the same about the visuals. Admittedly, since this game was originally an expansion pack for Galaxy 1, it reuses a lot of the same assets and pretty much has the same exact graphical aesthetic. If you put footage of the two games side by side, I guarantee someone who's somehow unfamiliar with the series wouldn't be able to identify which game is which. Hell, even I've gotten the two games mixed up in the past, and their near identical graphical styles were probably why. Saying that alone, though, would be downplaying how good Mario Galaxy 2 looks. If it's going to have a derivative graphical style, might as well take from a game with already great aesthetics, right? Just like last time, I recorded this game with the Wii's component cables and upscaled it with the OSSC for your viewing pleasure. And hey, good news, I actually remembered to set the pre-ADC gain right this time, so now I don't have to brighten up every single clip I use in post. Anyways, on a technical level, Super Mario Galaxy 2 is yet another one of the best looking games in the series. It is widescreen like Galaxy 1, a smooth 60 FPS with minimal to no drops, and of course, continues the Mario tradition by supporting progressive scan output. These things alone aren't enough to guarantee a game has an appealing visual presentation, but they certainly help a lot. In an artistic sense, Galaxy 2 is on par, if not slightly better than the original Galaxy, a game I already thought looked pretty good. I still prefer the consistent beach island theming that Sunshine went for, as well as its great world building that I've praised in almost all these videos, but you should already know that by now. Additionally, Galaxy 2 may not have the same sense of scale as its predecessor in general, but it makes up for that with creative, varied level themes and archetypes. Once again, the outer space setting is a trade-off, specifically swapping consistent world building for variety. Galaxy 2 has such awesome levels like Hightail Falls, Flipsville, Beat Block, and more. Shiverburn Galaxy in particular is a visual spectacle. Sure, it's essentially a freeze flame clone, but I don't care. I just love the idea of mixing fire and brimstone with ice and snow, with the two existing in a sort of yin-yang state. This level also has those Hell Valley sky trees in it, which was the source of my childhood intrigue and nightmares, but let's ignore that. In general, this game looks great, and is one of the best looking Wii games alongside the original. As I've been hammering into your head from this retrospective by now, the Mario series is no stranger to awesome music. Ever since 1985, basically every soundtrack in this entire series has been full of incredible songs. Super Mario Galaxy 2 continues this trend with yet another great selection of music. Just like the original, Galaxy 2 features CD quality audio for a majority of its songs. The older games used chiptunes and MIDI, and while that had no bearing on how catchy and memorable the songs in those games were, the boost in quality that Galaxy provided was definitely a plus. Galaxy 2 is much the same. Yeah, it does recycle some tracks from the first game on occasion, and some songs are straight up remixes of older tracks, but Galaxy 1 also had its fair share of remixes, and the songs that were borrowed by the sequel were some of the best ones from its predecessor. Pointing out that alone would also be a disservice to the incredible original compositions this game is chock full of. I genuinely can't think of a single track I dislike, which is impressive to me, so why not do what I always do and give a sampling of some of the game's best songs?
Thank you.
to say anything more. I wouldn't say this is my favorite Mario soundtrack, but like Galaxy 1, it's up there. Some of these songs are so good that I can't help but get them stuck in my head every now and then. Naturally, since Super Mario Galaxy 2 was originally conceived as an expansion pack for the first game, its gameplay goes further into the direction it initiated. Whereas that game went for far more linear level design overall and still had some degree of openness in many stages, Galaxy 2 is even more linear. Hell, a lot of its sections are just straight up 2D side-scrolling segments reminiscent of the pre-SM64 Mario titles. And while it does have the occasional splash of levels structured more like those from 64 and Sunshine, these moments are fewer and farther between. I'd actually say this is the game that laid the foundation for the 2D in 3D formula that 3D Land and World would both roll with. The game is still built around collecting stars, and you unlock levels based on how many you have, but the progression itself has been greatly simplified. All the previous 3D Mario games featured a hub world that you could access levels from. This game still has a hub with Starship Mario, but it's pretty much just to relax in between stages and stock up on extra lives and whatnot. I do appreciate these safe areas in games, but felt that the hubs from previous titles accomplished this just fine, if not better. Accessing levels is done by standing on the pressure plate next to the steering wheel, which takes you to the level select screen. In this game, it's essentially a world map from one of the classic side-scrollers, except in space, so it's automatically cooler. I don't really mind this that much, but it does admittedly make the game feel more railroaded on the whole. Just like the original Super Mario Galaxy, my overall impressions of this game have somewhat fluctuated over the years. I thought it was amazing when I was a young child, then went to thinking it was just pretty good and not much more when I revisited it in high school, and finally to thinking it was overall great but nothing too standout, just like the original when I replayed both last year. This time around, my thoughts are more or less unchanged from my last playthrough. Once again, I'm aware saying that Super Mario Galaxy 2 is a great game isn't a very bold or original take, but I assure you, I have a fair share of my own critiques as I did for the last game. While I am somewhat nostalgic for this game, I won't let that get in the way of what I have to say, and by the end, it will be crystal clear which of these two games I prefer. So with that established, let's waste no more time and jump in. I really don't have that much to say about the controls and gravity mechanics this time around, since they're identical to Galaxy 1. This once again means Mario isn't quite the joy he was to control in the early 3D titles, but still serviceable and easy to work with. Mario's moveset is the exact same as it was in the first game. He can long jump, backflip, side flip, and spin both as an attack and as a platforming tool. My opinions on these moves are unchanged, naturally. The long jump is amazing for shortcuts and speedrunning, the backflip comes in handy for collecting things out of reach, the side flip is finicky as it was in Galaxy 1 and is thus not as useful as it was in the early 3D games, and the spin is great for platforming but mediocre for combat. I am somewhat disappointed that they also didn't bring back the dive and spin jump when they probably could have for the sequel, but that's kind of a nitpick, so whatever. The camera in this game is about the same as Galaxy 1, might even be slightly better. Once again, the angles are usually preset, and you're only allowed to rotate it or enter first-person mode in designated areas. It can only be rotated in increments, meaning my search for a Sunshine camera system killer continues. Some may disagree, but personally I will always prefer camera systems with free rotation. Ideally it would be rotated with the right analog stick, but I can live with it if you use the shoulder buttons. Now to be fair, this game does use the Wii Remote Nunchuck, which doesn't have shoulder buttons or a second stick. They could have fixed this by allowing GameCube controller support and not forcing motion controls, but I'm letting my bias show again, aren't I? Anyways, the camera is more conducive to the stages this time because of their greater linearity, but in open areas it still leaves something to be desired. In general, not my preference, but it works for what the game goes for. As this is a sequel to Mario Galaxy, it goes without saying that the central mechanic is once again the gravity. It has the same engine and premise as the first game, so it would be insane if it didn't also have the thing that set the game apart from the rest. You'll once again be hopping between planets, standing on platforms upside down, and more, and it's just as well implemented as the original. In fact, I think it might even be a bit better in this regard, and found that the sequel didn't have as many instances where the camera angles hampered the gravity and made it awkward to move. I also find that the level design itself plays around with it in more creative ways on the whole. Out of all the 3D platformers that I've played that have a mechanic like this, Mario Galaxy 2 probably makes use of them the best. Speaking of the level design, let's talk about that. As I've argued in practically every one of my reviews so far, the level design is the core of all platforming games. It's what is the ultimate bottom line of quality for these games. Yeah, controls and mechanics are very important, as are the aesthetic qualities, but level design is usually what decides how good a platformer is. My reasoning for this is quite simple. All those other aspects can be good or even exceptional, but what does it matter if the stages they're built around aren't any good? Thankfully, most of the Mario games don't fall into this trap, and Galaxy 2 is yet another fantastic collection of stages in its own right. The open-ended collectathon stuff might be my preference, so the fact Galaxy 2 goes even further in the direction of 2D-esque linearity and even has plain side-scrolling sections a lot of the time is slightly disappointing in a sense. But good design is what it is, and I won't hesitate to point it out when I find it. I always preach the importance of focusing on the quality of execution rather than preconceived notions of how something should be, and Galaxy 2 is yet another notable case of this. The thing that makes the level design of Super Mario Galaxy 2 stand out even more than its predecessor is the set pieces. In my review of that game, the collection of the level set pieces was already one of the things I gave the most amount of praise to. Mario Galaxy embraced its nature as a journey across space wonderfully, and its set pieces were exciting and enhanced the level design to a significant degree. It was overall a very engaging game to play through. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is this, except far more creative and thus more interesting in general. This game seems to trade narrative presentation for greater gameplay depth and variety, something that pays off if you ask me. If I had to pick, I'd personally rather take a game where gameplay takes central priority over one that downplays that for a plot. In an ideal world, gameplay and story would be masterfully intertwined to make a truly standout experience, but if you can't do that, it's best to fall back on gameplay, and Super Mario Galaxy 2 does that well. On a basic level, the stages of this game check all the right boxes. A grand majority of the levels are perfectly built around the controls, nothing feels cheap or poorly thought out, and your moveset is put to solid use throughout the whole game. There are some annoying moments here and there, but I'm willing to put up with them to enjoy the game, and there's still a far cry from certain other games I've played. Hell, Galaxy 2 does still have a few levels that are more sandbox-like in nature, which is nice as well, but the fact that it's mostly linear doesn't really bother me too much, as I've been saying. I also greatly appreciate that Galaxy 2 marks checkpoints now, a crucial improvement any sequel to a first entry that didn't do this. Since the foundation is very solid in Galaxy 2, that opens the door for crazy, off-the-wall stage design with tons of exciting ideas. This game has a reputation for having some of the most creative level design in the Mario series, and I'd say it lives up to that and then some. Galaxy 2 is one of those games that goes nuts and just has fun with all of its ideas, all the while making the game even more challenging than its predecessor, and this results in some of the most imaginative and best level design in the series. I can list tons of them that do this very well, including Hightail Falls, Flip Swap, Spin Dig, Beat Block, Flipsville, Supermassive, Slip Sand, and Flash Black Galaxies. The three that jump out to me immediately are Flip Swap, Supermassive, and Beat Block. Flip Swap Galaxy is the first level in the series to feature those red and blue panels. Well, technically the second Bianco secret stage from Sunshine has something similar, but those were on automatic cycles. In this case, the player controls when they switch from red to blue by spinning, which offers a unique platforming challenge where you have to time your spins carefully. Supermassive Galaxy is also just plain cool to look at. It's exactly what it says on the tin. Like that one stage in World 4 from Mario 3 and Tiny Huge Island in Mario 64, everything in this stage is way scaled up, with huge enemies, pipes, coins, and more. It is a fairly easy stage, but I still love the idea. However, one of my absolute favorite stages in the game has to be the Beat Block Galaxy. Long story short, this idea is so good that many future games made use of it, just like the platforms for Flip Swap. Beat Block is, to my knowledge, the first Mario stage that integrates the background music as part of the stage design. Not only is the track itself an absolute bop, but it also decides when the colored block platforms switch solidity. This constantly keeps you on your toes and mandates that you think every jump and movement through, otherwise you'll fall into the pit below. At the end, you'll also have to climb on a sort of pyramid to collect Silver Star. The whole stage constantly asks for your attention, and it's extremely satisfying to jump between the blocks as they switch. I only wish it was a little longer and maybe incorporated a couple of other ideas, but that's splitting hairs at the end of the day. Point is, I love this stage and consider it one of my favorite levels in Super Mario Galaxy 2. On top of this, Mario Galaxy 2 also makes a few callbacks to the previous games. It wasn't the first one to do this, but it's easily the most obvious in this regard in the series yet. Well, at least in the games I reviewed as of now. Starshine Beach Galaxy is more of a loose reference, and is generally themed around Sunshine rather than directly replicating one of its levels. Of course, it's a summer-themed beach level, so I love it by default, but then they add Piantas in there. Apparently between the Isle Delfino incident and now, they've expanded into the outer reaches of space. They even throw the Chucksters in there, which is just plain hilarious. Overall, great stage, and it's even more open-ended like Sunshine was in the first place, which I appreciate. The one that's more upfront about it though is none other than the Throwback Galaxy. I mean, it's literally in the name of the level too. This stage is a one-to-one recreation of Whomp's Fortress from Super Mario 64, with a higher poly count and some changes to account for the Galaxy engine. If you know my opinions on certain games, you think I would throw up in my mouth the thought of this. Truth be told, I don't have a consistent rule on this nostalgia thing. As long as the game itself embraces its nature as a throwback, or just has it as a one-time thing, or just in general doesn't pretend like it's an authentic follow-up to some really old games, but in reality completely misses many aspects that made those games so fun, Not that I can think of anything like that, and I'm fine with it. When I was a kid, I don't remember what it felt like to reach this stage, but I probably shit my pants. This may sound kinda cheap, but Throwback Galaxy may just be my favorite level in the game. It recreates Whomps quite well, and even massively improves the fight with the Whomp King, as well as offering a fun new star that makes good use of the game's power-ups. It's both a neat callback to the first 3D entry in the series, and a testament to how much the series itself has evolved and expanded since then.
But you can't do canonless this time around, so that's a shame.
The boss stages are also quite good in design. I didn't mention the ones in Galaxy 1 in detail last time because, well, I kind of forgot, to be honest, which sucks because those levels were honestly some of the best in the game. Similarly, the ones from this game are quite good in their own right and are appropriately a bit more challenging than most of the standard levels. Not only is each one a proper test of your platforming skills, but also make use of Yoshi and other mechanics quite well. Oh, and I like how the second Bowser Jr. stage bears a striking resemblance to Egg Fleet from Sonic Heroes. I can't be the only one that noticed this, right? Anyways, point is, these levels are pretty solid. That's really all I have to say about this game's level design. If I haven't made it clear enough already, I think it's the game's strongest suit, which is great considering how much weight this particular aspect of platformers holds, like I said. While I still prefer Super Mario 64 and Sunshine over Galaxy 2 on the whole, even those games don't quite match how creative this game's level design can get. I could easily understand why so many people think this game is the best in the series, because its level design is really just that good. Now on to another core element of the Mario series, the power-ups. In the original Mario Galaxy, I thought these were generally a mixed bag. Some of its power-ups were great, like the Ice Flower and Bee Mushroom, some were mediocre, like the Red Star, and a few plain sucked, such as the Boo and Spring Mushrooms. On the whole, the power-ups in this game are improved over the ones in the previous game, but not all of them are winners. My favorite new power-up is definitely the Cloud Flower. This is the most iconic new power-up from this game, and it's probably one of the most well-known things about Galaxy 2 as a whole. That's for good reason, since this power-up is easily one of my favorites in the whole series. Once you pick it up, Mario gains a new cloudy outfit. In this form, you get 3 small clouds which follow you around, which is the central element of this power-up. When you spin, one of these turns into a larger temporary cloud platform which disappears after 7 to 10 seconds or so. You can get all 3 clouds back by collecting another flower, and just like the Bee Mushroom, you revert to normal Mario after touching water. This power-up is awesome for obvious reasons. Not only is it very useful for platforming on its own, but the sections you're required to use it in are some of the best parts of the game. It's also a very balanced power-up, offering an advantage while being properly limited. I also quite like the drill introduced in the Spin Dig Galaxy. It's exactly what it looks like, a drill that you can use to dig through dirt patches. All you have to do is pick the thing up, stand on a patch of dirt, and shake the remote. You'll dig through the ground all the way to the other end. Obviously, you can only end up on the other side if it's dirt, and you'll bounce off of it if it's rock or something. This makes for some pretty neat puzzles, such as when you have to fill that one rocky planet with water in the Cosmic Cove Galaxy. Also, can I just say how cool I think drilling through these pillars of dirt is? That's something I've always thought, even as a kid. Seeing the way Mario travels through the pillar is just so satisfying and makes me feel good in this weird way that's difficult to explain. I can't be alone on this one, right? Anyways, some power-ups from the original Super Mario Galaxy make an unsurprising return in the sequel. I mean, since this game is heavily based on the original, are you really shocked that it borrows a few power-ups? Several of the best ones were chosen, including the Fire Flower and Bee Mushroom. These are used just as well as they were before, and I'm glad they're back. In addition, the Health Mushroom is back, which once again doubles your health bar. It goes without saying that this upgrade is very useful and you should get it whenever possible, just like it was in Galaxy 1. Hungry Lumas appear before bosses in certain sections once again, selling them for 30 star bits, but you can also find them in the stage every now and then, which is supremely satisfying when you do. Unfortunately, like I said, a few of the game's power-ups are ones I'm not too keen on. The Rock Mushroom is a cool idea, and it can be gratifying to blow up enemies or huge stage elements with it. The problem is that the controls for when you're rolling is quite stiff, making it very easy to fall off the side of the stage. You also can't cancel out of the animation unless you hit a wall or some objects, further making it hard to control. Though it does have its moments, just this challenging mission in Melty Monster Galaxy. Remember how I said some of the power-ups make a return from the first Galaxy game? While most of the returning ones are good, they bafflingly brought back the 2 shittiest ones too, the Boo and Spring Mushrooms. Yeah, because these are the ones we had to bring back, and not an actually good one like the Ice Flower or something. Makes perfect sense. What sucks even more is that that power-up is in the game's files, it's just never used. Great. Thanks, guys. Anyways, I do find them less offensive this time around. The Booshroom is used very sparingly, though to be fair it also was in the original game, and for whatever reason, I don't find the Spring Mushroom's control to be as bad. Maybe it's ever so slightly improved, maybe I just adjusted to the power-up's crap factor, but I think it's because the levels it's used in are better designed around its controls. Quite possibly the most notable power-up, if you can even call it that, in this game is the return of Yoshi. Originally introduced in Super Mario World, he would make a cameo appearance if you collected all the stars in 64, and wouldn't be fully playable again into the main series until Sunshine, a decade after Super Mario World released. In that game, he was kind of an average addition. Not terrible, but still nothing special. He was mostly just useful for what you needed him for, so there was some wasted potential there. He was planned to be in Galaxy 1 but got canned, and he finally makes a return in Galaxy 2. If I'm honest with myself, this is the best playable Yoshi the Mario series has seen yet, for the simple reason he's far more integrated into the level design and is used in some fairly creative missions. He was a great tool in Mario World, but the problem there is that he couldn't flutter jump. Additionally, 3D allows for more freedom in crafting challenges based around him for obvious reasons. Not only is he a decent platforming tool, but also has some power-ups of his own, which all take the form of fruits he can eat. The bulb fruit lights up invisible stage geometry like the Matter Splatter Galaxy, the blimp fruit lets you float upwards for a few seconds, and the dash pepper allows you to roll around at the speed of run really fast, which allows you to travel up walls and even run on water. The sections that make use of these are some of the highlights of the game for me because of how well they're used in creating memorable set pieces or otherwise engaging missions. My only real complaint with Yoshi in this game is using his tongue. In order to use it, you have to aim at the screen with the Wii's pointer control, which has a tendency to disappear for no good reason. This happened in Galaxy 1 as well, but there the pointer was really only used to collect star bits in the distance and in some slower paced segments. Here you also have to use it to lick up enemies and swing on these flowers with Yoshi, two things that often have to be done in dangerous situations. Licking up enemies is simple enough, but these swings can be a real problem since they have a tendency to be suspended over a bottomless pit. It's possible to be in the middle of a chain of these things, and then the pointer drops, leading to a bullshit death. To be fair, this could be because of how my setup is arranged, but it's the best I can do, and I vividly remember this happening when I played these games on my old CRT setup in 2018. Most of the time though, it's livable, so I'm willing to get over it for the sake of enjoying the game. In general, while flawed, Yoshi is an addition that I appreciate quite a bit. Just like its predecessor was, Super Mario Galaxy 2 is chock full of boss fights. And like that game, they're some of the better ones in the series, though not all of them are great, and even the better ones are nothing overly impressive. I went over this in the last review, as well as pretty much every one of these reviews so far, but Mario bosses have more or less always been monumentally weak. That's not to say the series didn't have some decent fights every now and then, but the majority of them plain sucked. Again, it's nothing to do with the Mario series specifically. Most bosses in any given game come off as nothing but fluff or padding to me, especially if the fights are piss easy like they usually are. In some cases, their poor design can also drag down the game's pacing even more, and if the game in question already sucks, then the effect gets even worse. What I'm trying to say is that if games in the future just omit boss fights altogether, I wouldn't complain since not much would be lost. I'd rather these platformers in particular focus on what they do well, and that's platforming and level set pieces, not boring, drawn out boss fights that do nothing but artificially extend game time. Bosses can be done well sometimes, but from my observation, they're usually just time wasters that are either too easy or too annoying, so I'd rather just not have them. I don't know if that's a controversial take, but I don't care. The bosses in Super Mario Galaxy 2 are a bit of a mixed bag, like I said, but some of them are genuinely really good, which is more or less how I felt about the fights from the original. While a lot of them still run into the same issue most Mario bosses do, and that they're too easy, a few of them actually manage to be fairly challenging in a fun way. I'd probably still rather play the best of the game's platforming over these, but they manage to stand out as some of the top highlights of the game, which for boss fights is rather impressive. A few that come to mind immediately are Dig-a-Leg, Glamdozer, and the Womp King. Dig-a-Leg makes great use of the drill power-up and requires that you line yourself up with his glass weak point properly. The only thing I don't like about this fight is that the camera angle can screw with your control. You'd expect to be able to move with left and right on the analog stick, but sometimes it seems to switch to forward and back at a seemingly inconsistent interval. Besides that, it's a pretty solid fight with great music to boot. Glamdozer and Womp King both bring solid use of the ground pound, with Glamdozer revolving around switching gravity and Womp King basically being an improved version of the fight from SM64, where he also spawns small womps and causes earthquakes, making the fight more challenging. However, the best bosses in the game are the fights from the Bowser Jr. levels. In the first one, you face off against Gobblegut, one of the most visually impressive fights from the entire series. I mean, you're fighting against this gigantic serpentine dragon. How can that not be badass? He attacks by digging into the small dirt planet you're on, and you have to lure him into charging into it. The cue for this is when he makes a train sound. You can then spin into all the pink Final Hazard-esque bulges in his body to defeat him. There's even a secret second fight with him in the Battle Rock Galaxy, and there he's fiery and therefore quite a bit harder. Both versions of this fight are all in all enjoyable to go up against. The other two Bowser Jr. fights are with the cunt himself. In the first of these two, you fight against the gargantuan Mega Hammer robot, which gives me Egg Golem vibes, oddly enough, and in the second, it's this even bigger Boomsday Machine, which is essentially a foreshadow to a similar boss in Odyssey. Mega Hammer involves using Yoshi to lick up bullet bills and smash the robot's, glass nipples, I guess. And the Boomsday machine requires using the Cloud Flower to get to the top so you can ground pound its cockpit. These fights are, like the others I've highlighted so far, good uses of the game's mechanics and visual marvels for the Wii and the Mario series as a whole. That said, not all the bosses are great. In particular, Giga Lakitu and Sorbetti. Giga Lakitu is annoying just because he seems to move out of the way at the worst possible moment every single time, and since you have to damage him by aiming with Yoshi's pointer controls, yeah, not the most fun thing in the world to say the least. Sorbetti, on the other hand, is incredibly frustrating because the spin attack's dreadful range. His weak point is smaller than my, anyways, and the boss is constantly rolling, making it nearly impossible to hit this bastard. Not to mention, getting up after taking a hit takes a bit too long, which is tolerable elsewhere but a huge pace breaker here. However, worst of all, this boss is themed around winter, also known as the objectively worst season of all four, so he pisses me off even more. Okay, that last point was a joke, but still, this boss is obnoxious and I don't like it. Thankfully though, that's the worst the bosses get. Once again, the collection of boss fights in a Mario game always includes a fight with the main villain Bowser. This game also takes a page from Super Mario 64 and Galaxy 1, as you fight against him 3 times rather than just once. This Bowser fight is probably the best in the 3D series yet. At the very least, it's an improvement over the fight from Galaxy 1, whereas that boss focused on hitting a moving target with the limited range of the spin attack. Here you have to avoid his attacks and lure him into punching the ground, which then raises these floating meteorites you can ground pound to damage him. In later fights, his punches in the meteors also cause shockwaves that you have to avoid, adding a bit more mechanical challenge to it. This isn't the hardest fight ever, and in fact, after playing this game several times over the years, it's rather easy for me, but that doesn't mean it's a boring or unengaging fight. I also like how Bowser is huge this time around. I know I made fun of it in the intro, but fighting a massive dragon-like enemy is instant cool just to add water, and him floating around the tiny planet you're stuck on gives a proper sense of scale. With all that said though, it's time to discuss my biggest complaint with Super Mario Galaxy 2, and oddly enough, it's the same as my biggest problem with the original Galaxy. Yeah, it's once again the full completion experience. Just like the first game, Galaxy 2 is a lot of fun when you play it normally, just doing the fun missions or otherwise not caring about getting every star, but as soon as you actively try to get everything in the game, then it starts to fall apart. This is how I've always felt about 100% in these games, even since I was younger. I will say, however, that Galaxy 2 has a better full completion experience than the first game, because it fixes some of the issues, but that doesn't really say much. Many of the same problems from the first game return, and there's even a couple new ones. I'll start with the improvements this game makes. First of all, many of the obnoxious motion-controlled minigames have either been removed, or at the very least, aren't as terrible. That god-awful manta ray surfing was completely cut, which I'm glad for because that shit sucked last time. Also, the rolling ball of all things actually wasn't that bad this time around, to the point that I actually did most of the stars involving it. I'm not sure if the level design for this thing was improved, or if the controls were tweaked ever so slightly as to make them more free-flowing, or if I actually finally managed to adjust to the crap factor, much like the spring mushroom, but whatever it is, I'm not complaining. The way Hungry Luma galaxies were done is also much improved in this game. Rather than appearing seemingly at random in the hub, they now have dedicated spots on the world map that you can select at any time. When you do, the Luma appears on Starship Mario, and you can then feed him the necessary amount of star bits. Also, can I just say that I'm glad the game just shows you how much the Luma needs to unlock the galaxy on the world map, and you don't have to talk to them now? That was something that got really obnoxious last time, so I'm glad it was changed. The actual quality of the Luma galaxies is far more consistent this time around as well. I mean, some of the galaxies you unlock from these guys include Flip Swap, Honey Bloom, Beat Block, Sweet Mystery, and Flash Black. All incredible stages with really creative level design and fun platforming set pieces. Additionally, the way Prankster comets were handled is a huge improvement over the heavily flawed system from the last game. In Galaxy 1, the comets seemed to show up at random beyond your control. I know they were triggered by collecting certain stars, but how would you know that without some kind of guide or when the game says nothing about it? Maybe I missed something, but from my experience, I didn't see any mention of it. Whenever they were active, you couldn't play the level's normal mission until finishing the comet challenge, unless you were willing to fork over star bits, or if it randomly disappeared for no discernible reason. In Galaxy 2, you control whether you want these comets to appear with the new comet medal system. In each stage, a comet medal is hidden somewhere, sort of like the star coins from New Super Mario Bros. Not only does this offer more meat for completionists, but if you don't want the comet to appear, just don't collect the medal. However, even if you do collect it, you aren't forced to complete the comet mission whenever it appears, and the comet can't randomly vanish into the ether, so you can more or less do them at your own pace. The comet missions themselves are also much improved. They follow the same archetypes as the previous games, but their design seems generally improved because most of the comet types aren't as frustrating a lot of the time. You also don't have to beat Bowser to unlock the purple coin comets, so I can actually offer an opinion on them this time around. They're fun. Yeah, that's really about it. The only thing I don't like about the comet stars is that they don't immediately appear, and the amount of time you have to wait for them feels inconsistent. Still, much better system this time around. You also aren't forced to collect everything again as Luigi after getting it all once. It's all one straightforward adventure this time, which is how it should be. However, Luigi is still playable in this game. You run into him every now and then, and can switch for that mission by talking to him. After beating the game, you also unlock the ability to swap over permanently in Starship Mario. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend this, since his physics are atrocious. He slips and slides around like he's on ice, and his jump is way too floaty for my liking. I wouldn't call him unplayable, just a severe downgrade from Mario. Then again, Luigi usually sucks to play as in these games, so that isn't too out of the ordinary. Honestly, that's all I have to say regarding the positives of the 100% experience. They tried, they really did. I can tell the devs recognized the flaws with full completion last time around, and did a lot to make it better. However, even with that, the full completion experience in Galaxy 2 still falls flat for me for very similar reasons to its predecessor, as well as a few new things that they tried that ultimately didn't work as well as they probably intended. The main problem here is that, like Galaxy 1, the game periodically dips into some of the most frustrating missions in the Mario series yet. When I said that the comet stars weren't as annoying as Galaxy 1, I specified most comet stars. Most, not all. The Daredevil comets in particular are still irritating. I generally don't mind the bosses in this game, but having to do them damageless? Fuck that. Digga-Legs alone is the real deal. Remember how I mentioned that thing about the directional controls being weird? Well, that minor issue is a fatal flaw when you can't afford to take a single hit. Some full levels also have Daredevil runs, which... yeah, no thanks. Doing singular bosses with only one health point is irritating enough, so I can't imagine how having to deal with complete levels is. Also, remember how I said that the motion control minigames were better in Galaxy 2? Well, the rolling balls seemed better, but Galaxy 2 adds its own annoying minigame to replace the mantis surfing. I'm talking about the gliding stages. In these, you take control of this gigantic bird named Fluzzard, and have to glide him to the end of the stage. Take a guess how you steer. Yep, more clunky motion controls. Compared to the manta ray from last time, this doesn't handle as badly, but that doesn't really say much when it's more stiff than concrete on a summer day. Fuck, that analogy sucked, but you get what I mean. As a result, it's way too easy to slam into walls, and of course, if you even slightly brush anything, you instantly die. It gets even worse when you have to race these stupid birds, something that I just plainly refuse to do because the regular mission is frustrating enough. One of the later Luma galaxies is also a worse version of the first Fluzzard galaxy, so I just straight up didn't waste my star bits on it. But that's still not it. This game also has the chimp challenges, first encountered in Fluffy Bluff Galaxy. In the first mission of the level, you have to find Captain Toad, and nearby is a blue monkey on the top of the stage. He tells you that he'll see you around and then makes occasional appearances across the game. His challenges are a sort of score attack, and you have to beat his high score in order to get the star. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but these challenges can burn in hell. They are quite possibly the missions I hate the most in this game, for the simple reason that they're absolute bullshit, at least in my opinion. The one in Fluffy Bluff alone is super annoying, as the unnecessarily strict time limit and absurdly high score mandate getting high combos. It wouldn't be so bad if half the enemies weren't those stupid Octogoombas who shoot rocks at you. Getting hit makes you fall over and have to get back up, which takes an eternity, and since you have to jump on top of the enemies with perfect precision to keep a combo going, it's very likely one of these bastards will hit you, cut off the combo, and cause you to have to waste precious seconds waiting for Mario to get back up. Other chimp challenges involve a whack-a-mole minigame, a type of minigame that's always guaranteed not to suck, and another that makes use of that lovely rock mushroom that I just can't get enough of. So yeah, fuck these challenges. I have no idea what they were thinking with them because they aren't fun at all. Other than these specific examples, whether or not a mission is obnoxious is usually a case-by-case basis, and I can't really nail down a specific underlying flaw that would explain everything. Sometimes annoying enemy placement is to blame, or in the case of something like the Clockwork Ruins Galaxy, you might be starved of checkpoints in long sections of gameplay. In the last part of that level, you have to wait around for these huge wheels to get into position, and at the end, you have to use these stupid horizontal poles to swing up to the star. If you die at any point, it means having to wait through the boring wheel cycles all over again. Things like this aren't too common, but happen just frequently enough to raise my eyebrow and dissuade me from full completion, just like the last game. However, the things that really make me unwilling to fully complete this game are World S and the Green Stars. World S itself is basically this game's take on the special world from Super Mario World. And in all honesty, the world itself isn't the main problem here. Most of the galaxies here are quite good, such as Mario Squared and Twisty Trials, the latter of which is even a one-to-one recreation of the Rico Harbor secret stage from Sunshine, which is pretty cool. The real problem is the ludicrous star requirements, which necessitates slogging through some of the game's worst missions. I get that it's the super secret final world and it's supposed to be tougher, but the fact that you have to do so many annoying missions just to progress in this world turns me off from going further into it. Also, it includes the Grand Master Galaxy and the respective Daredevil run, which just No. Especially since it makes heavy use of the pointer with those Yoshi swings. The game also has 120 green stars scattered throughout. I would offer a substantial commentary on these things, but you have to get all 120 regular stars to unlock them, something I already don't want to do. So while you don't have to do everything again as Luigi to fully complete the game, the devs still somehow came up with something just as annoying that also entails replaying every single stage in the whole game all over again. Say what you will about the blue coins in Sunshine, but those were at least available as soon as you started the game, so you can get them alongside the main shines. The game didn't feel the need to pad itself out by restricting it until after you finish the final boss. I don't know why the games that came after seem to have a thing for artificially extending their 100% experiences by restricting a huge part of it until halfway through, but it really grinds my gears and puts me off from fully completing these games altogether. Again, I spent a while ranting about this, and I don't want it to seem like I dislike this game. I truly think it's an overall great title. I once again just think the 100% experience is unnecessarily bloated and kind of frustrating, so I'd rather stick to the bare essential playthrough, or any percent if you will. It's disappointing in that sense, both because the earlier games had such fun full completion playthroughs, and this is also a sequel, so you would expect it to be an unequivocal improvement. Just because a game has a bad full completion experience doesn't mean it sucks though. Galaxy 2 is one of those cases. With all that said, it's time to talk about the finale of Super Mario Galaxy 2. The first Galaxy game had what was probably the best finale in Mario history, and Galaxy 2, honestly, it feels pretty weak and rushed by comparison. I don't want this video to go out on a sour note, but that's just how I always felt about it. Instead of genuinely feeling like you've reached the end of a huge adventure across space, the last level is just sort of sitting there on the world map when you reach the star requirement. Yeah, no cool cutscene of flying to the center of the universe or anything. The final stage is just sort of casually waiting there for you. There's still a small moment where Lubba encourages Mario, and you do get to see Bowser's new galaxy generator sucking the energy from a comet. Oh boy, I wonder what that could be. But this still doesn't feel anywhere near as epic or grand as the first game did, which is a bit of a shame really. Thankfully, the last level, Bowser's galaxy generator, is actually pretty good and caps off the stages in this game fairly well. I like the platforming segments, it makes good use of the power-ups, and more. This moment with these flower swings sucks because of the unreliable pointer control, but other than that, I like the stage quite a bit. It has some pretty awesome visuals in its own right. On top of that, I just wish the story context around it was similarly up to snuff like it was in the last game. When you reach Bowser's throne at the end of the stage, he doesn't get any cool new visuals or a sequence where you have to dodge meteors. He's just waiting for you there like the other two fights. On a throne floating in the middle of a void. Oh well, at least the final boss in this game is substantially improved in a design sense. It is just the same bite from the last two Bowser stages, but it at least has more challenging attack patterns, including those shockwaves that make the planet look as though it was sliced like an orange. It isn't much harder, but I still enjoy this fight at the very least. And that's all for Super Mario Galaxy 2. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next... Oh. You know what? That's actually kind of funny. Sort of like Donkey Kong Country, this game pulls a fake out ending when there's actually another phase to the final boss. Honestly, it wasn't really necessary though, because this second phase is probably the easiest fight in the entire game. All you have to do is ground pound these floating meteors a couple times and Bob's your uncle. I'll admit, the visuals here look pretty neat, but the phase itself is so easy that I question why they even bothered with it. After defeating Bowser, Mario then meets up with Peach in a field of flowers along with the Grand Star, and the two then make their way back to Starship Mario. Once you're there, you find out that the comet from earlier was the Comet Observatory from Galaxy 1, no shit, and Rosalina then makes an appearance. She makes another long-winded speech about how not even the laws of the universe were able to stop love or friendship or whatever, and Master Luma returns to her. But not without taking Mario's hat with him, which hilariously enough isn't the last time he would lose it in the series. After this, you then enter the first playable credits sequence in the series, which is pretty fun to mess around in. And it's also fucking hilarious how Bowser is so tiny now. Look at that, look at that. Look at that son of a bitch. This is what you get for being a sexist bastard. In general, while this finale isn't the worst in history and wraps up the game fine enough, it still feels somewhat rushed and unsubstantial and doesn't have the same moments of brilliance the first game had. Sort of like the plot as a whole, honestly. The final stage and the first phase of the last boss fight do make up for that, but the ending itself is somewhat lackluster if you ask me. That's all I have to say about this game. Overall, I think it's great and has a lot of things going in its favor, but in addition to that, it has quite a few things I think could have been better. While some music tracks and graphical assets are reused from the first game, it doesn't change how great the game looks as well as how catchy the soundtrack is on the whole. Power-ups are also pretty good in general, in spite of a few that aren't so grand, and it's great that Yoshi is back even if his tongue is a bit annoying to aim. The game's greatest strength, though, is the incredible stage design. Mario Galaxy 2 takes everything that Galaxy 1 did and cranks it up to 11, all the while mixing in exciting exciting new ideas that propel the game to the next level. However, it also has its own share of negative points. For one, the story is essentially recycled from the first game, and it's even been scaled back in terms of presentation. The world map works fine enough, but feels oversimplified when compared to the last game. I also still prefer the open-ended stages from 64 and Sunshine, even with the super creative set pieces. The game's biggest issue, though, is still the full completion experience. This aspect was improved from last time, as the hungry Lumas and Comet Stars are way less annoying to deal with, but the game still suffers from an overall bloated full completion experience with obnoxious things like the chimp challenges and whatnot. 100% in both of these games is just not as fun as it was in 64 and especially Sunshine, and as a result, neither of the Galaxy games hold nearly as much replay value as either of the older 3D games, for me at least. With all that said, I still like Super Mario Galaxy 2. In fact, I'd say it's an improvement over its predecessor, and does what any good sequel does. It cuts a lot of the things that didn't work so well, and cleans up and expands upon what did. While it doesn't do that as well as it probably could have, Galaxy 2 does it well enough for me to prefer it. Call it nostalgia from having played this before the original, but that's just how I feel about it. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is my favorite game on the Wii, and one of the best titles from the series' history. Like Galaxy 1, it had the potential to become my favorite entry, and while it's undeniably a great experience, it isn't a game I find myself revisiting super often, though it is fun to come back to from time to time. That's all for my Galaxy 2 review, and my goodness, it was just about as long as the last one. And don't ask me how that happened, it just did. So much for the promise I made last time around that these would be shorter, because that very clearly didn't change anything. Whenever I start writing these, I always think I can keep it somewhat confined, but then I end up having way more to say than I initially thought. Anyways, the next review in this marathon should be shorter than the last two. I said should be, not will be, so don't be surprised if it ends up being over an hour. Anyways, the next Mario review will be a quadruple feature, as I'll be tackling a certain sub-series that released in between the huge main console entries. Come 2006, 2D Mario had essentially been in the backseat for a decade and a half or so. Yeah, we did get the advanced sub-series on the GBA in the early 2000s, but those were just remakes of past entries. The last original 2D Mario game at that point was Super Mario Land 2, released all the way back in 1992 on the Game Boy. Again, no, Yoshi's Island doesn't count for this marathon, so for all intents and purposes, it had been 14 years since the last 2D Mario game. By that point, most people who had played Mario hadn't touched one of his games since the NES days. In 2004, Nintendo had released the DS, a handheld that needs no introduction. 2 years later, they would put out a game on it that took the industry by storm, New Super Mario Bros. It was a 2D throwback in an era where such a thing was a rarity, but its success couldn't be ignored. It managed to reel in people who played Mario when they were kids, as well as new fans, and kickstarted the nostalgia craze that ate up a lot of the industry in the following decades. It would also receive a few sequels of its own, and then in the next episode of this marathon, I'll be talking about them. Yep, it's a New Super Mario Bros. Series review. I don't think I want to do it right now though. First, because I don't even own New Super Mario Bros. 2 or U, but also because I just made two nearly hour-long reviews of Mario games and kind of want to move on to something else for now. I have some things planned that I want to get around to, and this summer is perfect for that. So the retrospective is in hiatus again, but once it returns, I'll be talking about the New Super Mario Bros. Games in full. Will I like them just as much as the games I've praised thus far, hate them, be completely indifferent? That remains to be seen. I've been Diamond Manor Studios, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.